Welcome back to Speak Out with Christine Yergin. We are in Washington, D.C. and have just finished up the National Pro-Life March. We're at the National Pro-Life Summit right now, and we have Isabel Brown with us.
Hello!
Isabel, it's so fun to do these in person, especially with a friend, because I feel like I do a lot of things virtually, and now we're here one-on-one. We've known each other, how long have we known each other now? I don't even know.
5 years now?
And this is like our fourth pro-life weekend in January that we've done together, 4th or 5th, something like that. But you have news. I'm going to let you share it.
In case it's not incredibly obvious, your girl is pregnant, which is very exciting.
Which I love. And you're having
I'm having a girl. We've been very vocal about all of that, but we're keeping her name a surprise until she gets here.
And how's pregnancy treating you so far?
I won't lie. The first few months were kind of the trenches, which I think a lot of people experience. Ultimately, I'm learning through this journey. Pregnancy is so different for every kid. And for every woman, it just looks completely different to every single circumstance. So I've been talking with a lot of women who are like, I had no symptoms my first trimester. And I'm thinking, you lucky son of a duck. Yeah, that's just great. It was tough the first few months. And I also was walking through kind of a challenging journey of being diagnosed with an autoimmune disease right before I found out I was pregnant. So that added a little bit of an extra layer of complication. But just like everyone said it would, the second trimester came and I feel like a human again. I got my glow up. We're feeling great. And overall, I am so incredibly grateful to have had a very healthy, relatively pretty easy pregnancy. Yeah. And it's just been such a beautiful journey so far.
Which in this case, I would say you lucky duck, because 9 months of pregnancy for me, I was throwing up the entire time.
Yeah, at least I don't have that, so we'll take it. We'll take what we can get.
But it's so worth it, right? So this is the first March that you have done as a mother. How did that feel? I mean, that had to be super special to be able to have your daughter in your belly, walking with you, where there's 3 people on this couch right now. It's not just me and you, and you're not a mother to be, you are a mother already.
It was such a perspective change, honestly. And I think everything that I've been working on for the last 6 months or so since I've been pregnant has been a huge perspective change. I talk a lot about this issue. I talk a lot about women and motherhood and families and why we need to revive the family. But when you're actually walking through it and living it yourself, it just provides a totally different vantage point from which to realize the importance of what we do every day. And of course, you know it's important until you start to experience it for yourself. It was funny yesterday, I was joking in a Man on the Street interview outside at the march that I'm not only marching, my daughter's marching too, because she was kicking inside of me the whole time and it felt like she was marching alongside. And I think for me, the last few months have just been so eye-opening about the emotional intimacy and connection that we have with our children from the moment we know they're in there. There's an ambiguous period of time after your first pregnancy test where you're like, are you real? Are you sure you're in there? Because you can't feel anything yet and you don't have a bump yet. But we were so fortunate to hear our daughter's heartbeat on an ultrasound at 7 weeks for the first time, which was so early. They warned us we might not hear anything. And it was so strong and thumping away. And by 11 weeks, a few weeks later, they were showing us all the tiny bones in her hands and all of her organs and all the chambers of her heart. And I'll never forget seeing all of that and just totally breaking down in tears on the ultrasound table, because you know this to be true, but when you see it for your own child, it just adds so much extra perspective to everything.
It becomes really surreal almost, you know? And I remember thinking, and I've told you before, we had dinner the other night and I was telling you, like, it's really the first time that you get to experience unconditional love, like true unconditional love in a fraction of the way that God loves us, you know, because these are our babies, and no matter what they do in life, you know, whether they go on to be president of the United States or they do something that's maybe disappointing, not saying that that's obviously going to happen, but you still love your child unconditionally, and it is so incredibly beautiful. So yesterday, when we were at the march, we got to hear from J.D. Vance,
so
the new
exciting.
vice president, in his first public speech since being a vice president. He said, make more babies. What's your take?
Oh my gosh, I was so excited when he said that, and the internet has been going crazy in the last 24 hours since then. People are comparing this to like a fascist regime or somehow like the Hitler Nazi party making people have children and nationalizing that idea, which is ridiculous. But in the country that we live in, I guess we really shouldn't even be surprised. But people had this resounding response to that in the crowd. Everybody was cheering. I was standing next to my beautiful friend Claire, who I worked with at the White House in 2018, who's also pregnant with a daughter. And we were cheering so loudly, and it was so exciting. Because I think what people are realizing right now in the 2020s is that we have been culturally robbed of the value of the American family. We have been strategically fed, especially through my generation, this onslaught of propaganda from newspapers and magazines, from television networks, from Hollywood, biggest influencers on the internet, politicians, and everyone else, that marriage and children are something to be scorned from society, that it's something we should never even remotely yearn for because it's going to lock you down and ruin your life, especially as a woman if you're subservient to your husband, that children are going to ruin your independence, your career, your friends, your adventure, and your fun in life. And yet we are facing the biggest mental health crisis any generation in history has ever seen, largely centered around loneliness and anxiety and depression, because we're self-isolating ourselves from the most meaningful relationships possible. So when the Vice President of the United States says we want to see more babies in our country, that's not just to repopulate our country, which is important, and we're not doing that right now. Like, we're desperately underpopulated. But B, I think it's to bring so much richness and beauty and fulfillment to people's lives that we've been so missing in this postmodern leftism ambiguous culture lately.
Yeah, we're seeing almost the demonization of motherhood and families. And
I wouldn't even say almost. I think we are seeing the demonization of
truly.
Motherhood. Yeah.
And people say, you know, I've seen people on social media call babies crotch goblins and all of these like horrific things that are really crazy. And a lot of it comes from the feminist movement. Yeah. I'd say the modern day feminist movement, obviously not like traditional feminists. But what I find so mind-boggling and kind of ties into us being in DC here this week, the inauguration was last week. They had a People's March, which was formerly the Women's March. Yeah. They can't even say women anymore. Yeah. I don't understand it, but this is the same people that are downplaying motherhood and saying you don't need to have children, you need to climb the corporate ladder, you need to be a CEO, you need to go have your dreams, and you can't have babies because that will ruin it. But now they can't even say the word woman.
Honestly, let me just go on a tangent for a second about that. That mentality, I think, is so insulting. It is so disgusting to me that there's this entire movement of, we'll call them women, don't want to assume, but people with vaginas, let's just say that, who genuinely believe that you cannot do it, that you are not strong enough, you are not capable enough, you cannot stand on your own 2 feet, and also nourish a beautiful new human life and raise them and instill good values in them. I work full-time, more than full-time. I'm a CEO. I work ridiculous hours. Has it been easy through pregnancy? Absolutely not. And I'm not remotely going to pretend to be the expert on when she's born and what my sleep schedule and everything like that might look like. But I have no intention on stopping my career. I'm only more passionate and more excited about all of the things that I do because it has so much more meaning now. My mom worked full-time my entire childhood. She traveled for work every single week, and that was difficult, but it was what our family did, and it made us who we are today. So I was growing up never being told that I couldn't do something if I wanted to become a mom, or I had to put off a family, if I wanted to have this enriching, fulfilling career. But it's so insulting and so disgusting and frankly wildly misogynistic that these movements tell women you just can't do it. But what I'm really concerned about with these people's marches or movements of postmodern feminism is really the strategic erasure of womanhood that's happening as a result through this process. I talked about this a few months ago on Ellen Fisher's podcast with this wild, insane, actual
and went viral
family medicine doctor who left the podcast saying, "Oh my gosh, I have to go. So excited. I'm delivering 3 babies in the morning." And she was so excited to deliver 3 babies after we spent 2 hours talking about why abortion is so necessary for women. But we've watched over the last several years, women literally, that word be erased from our society. You're a birthing person. You're a person who menstruates. You're a chest feeder, which literally means men secreting juice from their nipples because of hormone stimulation.
Who even knows what that juice is?
Nobody knows. The world may never know. And now that has escalated to such a substantially scary place in the federal budget, in clinical medicine, and now the Women's March even, where I saw many pink hats earlier this week, but I thought women didn't have to have a vagina. So the world may never know what's going on over there.
It's all so bizarre to me. And thank goodness that President Trump just said that there are only 2 genders and we can hopefully get back to some sort of reality, because really anybody who understands science, which you have a background in science, we all know this, and it's basic biology.
Yeah.
You touched on it very briefly, talking about like you're not pausing your career, you're going to keep going. What does that look like in the first days of motherhood? There's probably people watching who maybe are, say, how do people juggle it all? And I know you're still going to be learning how to juggle it all once you have a newborn, this being your first time. What is your plan going into it?
Oh, good question. Plans will go out the window, I'm sure, in the minute that she's born.
Don't they always?
And I really do try to reiterate over and over again. I know I talk about marriage a lot. I'm not a marriage expert. I've been married for almost 7 months, and it's been absolutely amazing and the best chapter of my life. But my husband and I are still walking through navigating that and what that means for our life. Same thing goes for parenthood. I've been pregnant for 6 months, which has been amazing, and I can speak to my own lived experience, but I'm certainly not a parenting expert. And I think if you ask any parent in the world, they'd tell you there's no such thing. Everybody has to walk through this journey and figure it out for themselves. But I can tell you for our family, generally what that's going to look like is continuing to create content about what this journey has looked like for us. We will probably gatekeep a little bit of safety for our daughter and make sure that she's not exposed to all of that as much as we can on social media. But I have just so fallen in love with the encouragement that I'm seeing from so many people who are just younger than myself and who are constantly being fed these lies that marriage will ruin your life, that children will ruin your life, that being outspoken about conservative values or your faith will ruin your life. There's been such a depressing void of meaning in our society for the last several years. And so just being able to authentically share that with people and let them know there's so much beauty on the other side of those lies if you're just willing to try it for yourself. We absolutely will be continuing. I'll keep putting out the podcast this year, and we're doing lots of really exciting episodes for that. And I don't know when this is coming out, but I guess we can say it. We're also moving to Washington, D.C. before she is born. So I'll be right in the middle of the center of the universe for the next few years, and very excited about collaborative opportunities with the government and some big players here in Washington. I really look up to so many of my friends who are now working for this administration as young moms with babies, because there's such a sense of service to our country, to our culture, to what God is doing as he's working through America right now. Quick shout out to my friend Caroline Levitt, who is our new and youngest ever White House press secretary. I'm glad I don't have to go through this journey, but she actually went back to work full time 4 days after giving birth to her son. After President Trump was shot at the assassination attempt in July. She wasn't planning on that, but plans go out the window when duty calls and when service is something that we all feel called to. And there are so many young moms in this city right now that are juggling all of that in such a beautiful way. So I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, I know Caroline very, very little, but she's phenomenal at what she's doing right now. We're so grateful for what she's doing, serving our country. I mean, I don't know what would have happened had President Trump not won. I mean, it would have been really dark. You touched very briefly about kind of gatekeeping a little bit. How do you feel about sharing kids on social media? Yay, nay? Are you going to share her? Are you not? Are you going to do no face? How's it going?
Honestly, my husband and I haven't really talked a whole lot about it yet. I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about it when we're ready to announce that she's been born and we're sharing all that on social media. I probably imagine a bit of a hybrid model. I certainly am very cognizant of all of the dangers of constantly putting your children on social media. And I have no plans on being like a mom blogger or a mom TikToker that's constantly shoving a camera in my child's face. I just don't think that's really fair to a little child, especially a baby. But, we love sharing our family, and people have really invested in our story and have been praying for us for this whole journey of everything that's looked like from the time I met my husband as my boyfriend all the way through where we are right now. And we're very excited to continue sharing that in a responsible way with everybody too in the future.
Yeah. So tell me, right now, MAHA movement's really big. For anybody who doesn't know, that's Make America Healthy Again. Are you on the MAHA train? Are you going to be crunchy mom, holistic mom? Are you not into that? Like, everybody is going to want to know like the details of Isabel Brown pregnancy and what she sees the future of motherhood to be.
Okay, well, we'll start with pregnancy, I guess, and then we'll get into the mom side of things. But I will say, I just find this totally interesting, and you get this too, living in Colorado. When I was growing up in Colorado, if you were the crunchy granola mom, you were clearly a liberal. Like, you never showered, you did not use deodorant, you always were on a hiking trail. And I grew up as a really granola kid, actually, despite having really conservative parents. So it's been fascinating for me because, we ate all the horrible freezer food and all the terrible red dye candy and everything as kids, but we were a bit of a granola family. To watch this evolution now, that if you are skeptical of big pharma or big food, if you want a return to natural holistic medicine, if you're interested in having your own hands in your food, like growing stuff in your backyard or making sure you know where your meat comes from, you're this radical right-wing extremist.
Isn't that bizarre?
It's wild to me. I have no idea how we got there.
So
I'm not perfect, obviously. I don't think anybody could be. I am all in on the MAHA movement. I think I was very fortunate to have a bit of a step ahead of the general public on this because I actually got my master's degree from Georgetown down the road in biomedical sciences policy and advocacy. Very long name, but essentially healthcare policy during 2019 and 2020. So we were talking about vaccines and we were talking about big pharma and big food and why the FDA has some really concerning practices from the people who work at the FDA and all of those places several years ago. And I love that now everybody's paying attention to it. And global health seems to be a conversation of actual importance in the world. If COVID did anything good, it would probably be that. So I try not to overwhelm myself and like freak out that I have to throw away thousands of dollars of products of makeup and skincare and shampoo and the cleaning supplies under my kitchen sink and everything in my fridge and my pantry and laundry detergent and all the clothes that I wear, because that is enough to just induce a heart attack in anyone, frankly. And once you start going down the rabbit hole, it's just, oh my gosh, everything is poisoning me. You can't afford to live like that. But my husband and I have taken really strategic steps throughout my pregnancy and because of some of my autoimmune stuff, even before we were pregnant, to try to rid our house of whatever toxins we can, one thing at a time, one project at a time. So I've done a big overhaul of my makeup and skincare products. I talk about that a lot in my content. Generally with food, we just try to eat real food instead of packaged, processed everything, and that's made a huge difference. I think knowing that there are companies like Good Ranchers out there that I know it's actually healthy American meat for us to eat that I can keep in my freezer, that has taken a lot of the guesswork out of this for me. And as for all of the, I'm not sure if we're even allowed to use the word, but vaccine schedule of everything, I think people are starting to have really honest conversations as young moms that there's probably something in the middle that makes the most sense, right? Like vaccines are an absolutely incredible invention of modern history that have saved literally countless lives, millions upon millions of lives. But there are a lot that are concerning about how they were produced, and maybe you don't need to give an 18-month-old 50 vaccines by the time they turn 18 months. That's extreme and is setting off some alarm bells for a lot of people. So finding the middle way, the happy way, and trying not to totally freak yourself out with the rabbit hole, I think has been our family's approach and is letting us make conscious decisions one project at a time that we can get to the MAHA place we want to be at, and hopefully continue to see some really exciting policy changes here in Washington with some new leadership there.
I think it's so great that you're able to do this before having a baby. Like this information wasn't necessarily as easily accessible to me when I had my child at 17 years ago at age 20. I didn't really know about all of this stuff. You know, I knew eat your vegetables and eat your fruit and that kind of stuff. But now it's kind of, I see this like awakening. And it is strange that it is considered right wing now because it's genuinely just
human.
Eat how like this grows on trees. We're supposed to eat this or grows from the ground. But I do find concerning the fact that we do have a lot of things poisoning us. It's not just the pesticides. It's not just the things that they're spraying on our food. It's not just all of these other things that we've seen people talking about. Right now, we're seeing also the chemical abortion pill is in our water.
Why no one is talking about that blows my mind, to be honest with you, particularly from the environmentalist side of things. I mean, quite literally, the FDA and the EPA have refused point blank, many, many times when requested, to do any sort of environmental impact study on the presence of chemical abortion pills in our wastewater that in a lot of places, like here in Washington, D.C., in the DMV area, recycle their water, so you're drinking that later on. It's terrifying. But essentially how that works, in case you're not familiar, the chemical abortion pill, which is the vast majority of abortions that happen in America, it's where you take two different pills within a few days of each other. Tragically, typically you give birth over the toilet or in the bathtub to your very, very small child that you can typically hold in the palm of your hand, and nobody talks about that. They say it's going to feel like a heavy period, but they don't tell you you're going to have to flush your baby down the toilet more often than not.
That's why they tell you to flush it.
Yeah, it's horrible. So you're flushing the pills that you took in your pee or in your urine. It also comes out with a lot of the blood that you're shedding through those few days, and you're actually flushing human remains down the drainage systems of our bathtub, showers, and toilets, which is a lot to think about, and I'm very emotional because I'm pregnant and very hormonal about it, but it's horrifying that we treat people that disposably. But in the waste from those pills that comes out of your body, there are still active metabolites in those drugs. So just because it passed through your body doesn't mean it's not still active. And those active metabolites are now flooding into our wastewater, which animals are drinking and consuming every day, which plants are interacting with, and which get recycled into our own drinking water. So we're actually drinking abortion pills. Nobody wants to talk about that, but it's scary.
So do you think, and tell me, because obviously you have more of a science background, do you think that could potentially be affecting the fact that we have abortion pills in our water? Do you think that could be affecting women getting pregnant today and staying pregnant, affecting the miscarriage rate?
Yeah, a number of people in my family and my friends are really struggling to conceive, which honestly makes this pregnancy feel such a blessing to our family. It's truly a gift from God, and maybe happened pretty quickly after our wedding compared to what we expected, but we are just so unbelievably grateful for this opportunity to bring new life into the world, because so many people we know are really struggling with conceiving and figuring out what that looks like for their family. I can't remember the statistic right off the top of my head, but it's something like 1 in 7 couples are struggling with something called undiagnosed or unexplainable infertility.
Yeah. And the number continues to rise.
It continues to rise every single day. So basically on paper, everything is working, but nothing is working. You can't naturally conceive. Right. And I have to wonder how much of that has to do with this wastewater problem that's now in our drinking water. The birth control pill, we are now finding out through some studies, absolutely is impacting what your body is naturally doing. And for people like me, you know, my generation, everybody took birth control. We were all prescribed birth control for something, for acne, for heavy periods, for cramping, back pain. You just don't feel good. Here, there's this magic pill that's going to make you feel better. So I'm incredibly transparent that I took birth control for 9 years because I had really severe acne and was originally prescribed it to take alongside Accutane, which was a government mandate or regulation that way. But by the time I quit, you know, you realize I have been artificially deregulating really my body for a decade, and I don't know what's going on. I have no idea how this naturally is supposed to take place. I didn't really have a period for most of my teenage and young adult years, and so I'm incredibly fortunate that I've spent the last few years figuring out how to rebalance my hormones and be really intentional there. There's a lot more products that exist now compared to even when I quit a few years ago that I think are really helpful for people. But between the birth control pill, the seed oils in our food that are causing rampant inflammation and a lot of problems like endometriosis and PCOS, and the water supply, it's no doubt to me that so many people are struggling to conceive. And it truly is an anti-woman, anti-family agenda that is like a silent killer of the next generation that nobody is covering in the media.
Yeah, well, I'm hopeful because we now have RFK Jr., who is really pushing for a lot of this stuff. We did see Red 3 banned.
Yes.
We need Red 40 and all the other dyes. So there are like little baby steps that I'm seeing, and I think we'll continue, hope and pray that we'll continue to see these steps. And I know that you'll use your platform. You talk about this very frequently, and you care about the health of our country, but obviously the fact that you have new life coming into the world, it's important to you too. So I'm hopeful that we'll see the next 4 years, we're going to have a lot of things banned, a lot of, you know, why do we have glyphosate? We don't need that anymore. Let's get rid of that. These are things that we don't need in our food, in our water system, because glyphosate goes into the ground, goes into our water. And we have a lot of health issues in this country, which is really insane. What is next for Isabel Brown? Tell me what you have coming up. We know you said you're moving to DC.
Yep.
Lots of big things in store for you. Can we have a sneak peek into the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are reworking the format of my long form content quite a bit in the early half of this year. Obviously, I won't be able to live stream every single day sitting in front of a camera just because of the nature of my changing life. So we're really blowing out long form podcast episodes, both me solo talking about stuff that we normally talk about on my show and featuring some really incredible guests in the faith space, in the family space, in the MAHA movement that are really doing everything they can to change things, and lots of people here in Washington too. I'll just sprinkle that in. You'll see all of that to come. We got a big move ahead of us, and my due date is May 7th, which is going to sneak up on me very, very quickly. So we got a lot of preparation to do for the baby and create a beautiful nursery. And if you have any stroller recommendations, anyone out there, please drop them in the comments because it is honestly so overwhelming as a first-time mom knowing how many options are out there for everything.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's a lot to spin your head around. I'm very grateful TikTok is back because I have a massive folder of saved videos, as does every first-time mom, of product recommendations and everything. But mostly this year, I'm just so excited to share this journey with my family and to share my family with the amazing community that we've been building online. We're so grateful for all of them.
Well, I love you and adore you personally as a friend, and I know us at Students for Life have such a beautiful relationship with you, and we're so excited to meet baby, and I can't wait to love on her, and so excited for you and Brock and everything that you guys have. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Christine. You're the best.